And the next speaker is Tony Rivera, who many of you will know. He is an experienced and successful geologist who's actually been involved in the discovery teams of some of the projects you would have heard earlier today. He's currently the Managing Director of Azure Minerals.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me the opportunity to give you the Azure Minerals story and the very exciting developments that have been happening recently. The title of the talk is Andover, Australia's newest nickel copper sulphide deposit. It could quite just as easily have been Andover, Australia's newest nickel copper sulphide district, because we have this last week announced the first mineral resource for the project, a nickel copper cobalt sulphide resource. And we're currently drilling out a deposit right next to it, which we expect to become the second deposit. And we also expect there's going to be many, many more deposits yet to come. So there's a lot of activity happening. And so far, we've had a great deal of success. Usual disclaimer and statements can be found on our website. Corporately, the company's got about 300 million shares on issue, and we've got a market cap of between $115 and $120 million at the moment. At the start of this year, we started with about $19 million in the bank, so we're very well funded for what we're doing. As far as our major shareholders go, the largest shareholder is Deutsche Balaton, which is a significant shareholder in quite a few West Australian exploration and mining companies. And Deutsche Balaton have been our largest shareholder for over 5 years now, very supportive, and we're welcome to have them there for a very long time into the future as well. The second largest shareholder is Mark Creasy and the Creasy Group. Now, the Creasy Group, or Mark Creasy in particular, is very well known in the industry, is probably Australia's most successful mining entrepreneur and explorer, responsible for finding or having projects under his control on which were found many, many major gold and nickel deposits. And as a result of that has become a reasonably wealthy man. So Mark has been a shareholder of ours since the IPO back in 2003, albeit a very minor shareholder. Up until 2 years ago, Azure Minerals was exploring for precious and base metals in Mexico. And although we were reasonably successful over there, a combination of a plummeting of metals prices in 2019, followed by COVID in early 2020, Azure elected to make the decision to put our projects in Mexico on care and maintenance and pivot back to a focus into Western Australia, where we felt that we would be able to continue to work even amongst the pandemic that was going on at that time. But we needed some projects. So I approached Mark Creasy and I asked him if he had any projects that he would consider vending into Azure. And he thought about it for a while and he came back to me and said, yes, I've got 1 nickel project and 3 gold projects that I would consider putting into the company in exchange for some more shares in your company. And we came to the deal, and as the end of the deal, and as a result, Mark's shareholding rose up to around 16% of the company. In exchange, we got majority ownerships of those projects that he vended in. The nickel project is the Andover project. It's a really interesting one that he has held for about 20 years and has carried out a fair bit of exploration on in a minor way, and had some modest success in terms of finding nickel. And then we got the deal with Mark done, and we've been on the ground and we've had instantaneous success, and it's been continuing ever since in the last 18 months. Well, a bit more about the project in a second. But firstly, a very strong acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the country in which we're working, that the Ngarluma people, and through them their representative body, the Ngarluma Aboriginal Corporation, they control or own the land for most of the western part of the Pilbara. We've made a very strong and conscious effort to develop really positive relationships with the local people and their controlling body. And that's now paying dividends, where we're getting some very, very positive interactions happening, particularly in regards to having heritage clearance surveys undertaken so that we can go out there and carry out the exploration activities that we want to take. So I do thank them very much for their very strong and cooperative relationship. To the extent where right now, as we stand here today, we're in the middle of a 5-day heritage clearance survey being undertaken in the middle part of our project area so that we can go and drill a whole lot more prospects that we've identified. And expanding out from the community relations side of the things, we've also got the whole ESG picture that we need to consider. And sometime back last year, beginning of last year, the company made a conscious effort that we would embrace the ESG concept. So we are doing that, and we intend to be the very best we can and to be actually as good as the highest standards that are being set by both Australian and international organisations. So on to the Andover project itself. It's the Andover nickel, copper and cobalt sulphide project located in the Western Pilbara part of Western Australia, very close to the town of Karratha. It's a 60-40 joint venture. Azure Minerals owns the 60%. It's not an earn-in joint venture. We actually own that 60%. We paid for it with shares in the company to Mark Creasy and his group. And the Creasy Group retain a 40% free carried interest, which is carried through to the decision to mine, at which point the Creasy Group will be committing their pro rata. The photograph we've got here is a photograph of, in the foreground is the town of Roebourne, and just behind it there's obviously a hill, and about 2 to 3 kilometres behind that hill is where our project is located. So here we are, probably 3 to 5 kilometres to the actual deposit that we're drilling from the town of Roebourne, half an hour's drive from the town of Karratha. So access into the area is brilliant. You couldn't get a better located project from an exploration and mining point of view. So the deposit. So we've got Andover, the overall project, and we've also called the first deposit Andover, just to confuse things a little bit. So the Andover deposit, the maiden mineral resource was announced the middle of last week, and it's a really good start to what we believe is going to be a really significant project. 4.6 million tonnes of 1.1% nickel and 0.5% copper, plus some very strong cobalt credits as well. So overall, over 51,000 tonnes of nickel and 21,000 tonnes of copper, and some cobalt credits as well. So what we've got here is a really strong base to go forward with. And within that actual main deposit, we have a high-grade core, and that high-grade core is a solid block of mineralisation that it contains about 2 million tonnes at about 1.8% nickel equivalent. So that's a very, very robust resource. And what makes it even more robust is the fact that over 80% of the resource tonnes are contained within the indicated resource category, which is a very, very strong category as far as going forward for mining studies. Now, so we're looking here at a snapshot of the Andover deposit itself. On the left-hand side, we have an aerial photograph that shows in blue lines the drill holes that we put into the deposit. The deposit outline is shown protected to surface as the red shape there. We put 102 diamond drill holes into this project, so into this deposit. So we know it very well now. The mineralisation actually outcrops at surface. So it has come to surface where it is slightly weathered, and it forms what is called a gossan. That gossan continues, it becomes more sulphide rich as it goes down, and by the time it's 20 metres below surface, it's 100% sulphides. And that sulphide zone of mineralisation continues from 20 metres down to well over 500 metres below surface, and it is still open at depth. And on the right-hand side of the image there, you can see the red is the indicated category of the resource, which shows the really solid core of higher grade mineralisation and better defined mineralisation right in the middle. And that's surrounded by the orange, which is the inferred category. There's one single fault that runs through it that gives a slight offset that cuts it breaks it into two smaller pieces. But that's the only structural complication in the entire deposit. Everything that we've drilled in there indicates that the ground conditions are excellent for underground mining, and also that there's really good continuity through that. So the width of the mineralisation is 10 to 20, up to sometimes 30 metres wide, and the grade is consistent throughout that deposit. So from hole to hole, from drill section to drill section, There's really good continuity of mineralisation throughout that. And there is still room to grow by doing further drilling around the edges and down below. So if we take a little step back at the moment and we go back to have a look at the overall project area, which is shown there, it's the blue polygon. It's a single exploration licence. It contains 70 square kilometres. Within that tenement, we've got what's called the Andover mafic ultramafic layered intrusive. It's a big block of rock that is intruded into the countryside a long time ago. The pale green are the mafic component of rocks, and the purple are the ultramafics. And at a very late stage, right at the end of this whole intrusive complex, there was a late intrusion, which is shown as that dark green, which we call the southern mineralised corridor in the bottom left-hand corner of the tenement. That green corridor down through there contains all of the mineralisation that we've identified so far. What we've got is multiple prospects and multiple anomalies, which are represented by either geophysical targets, electromagnetic surveying, which identify bodies of electrical conductivity in the bedrock, plus sticking out of the ground, we've actually got nickel and copper mineralisation exposed at surface. And because there's no soil cover here, you can follow the host horizon for about 5 kilometres from the lower left-hand corner of the tenement up towards the middle of the tenement. You can follow it along. You can crack the fresh rocks open at surface and find nickel and copper within that fresh rock at surface. It's quite remarkable that in this day and age there are still deposits like this sticking out of the ground in Western Australia. It's just quite remarkable. So we've zoomed in on that area to the southwest quadrant. And we've already identified and we've drilled out the Andover deposit. And not only that, we've actually got to the resource stage. So where to from here? So we go back down to where the Andover deposit is, and we just widen the picture slightly, and we've got another prospect immediately to the west of it. It's called Ridgeline. And we started drilling on Ridgeline. Now, Ridgeline does not have any outcropping mineralisation at surface. It was identified through a geophysical survey which identified the electromagnetic conductor bodies in the bedrock. We started drilling those and we started hitting more nickel. And you can see on there, there's this red shape with the surface projection of the sulphide mineralisation coming to surface. There's a couple of those in there. We've drilled about 30 drill holes into it, and we've been hitting some really high-grade nickel and copper mineralisation within this. In fact, much higher grade than what we find in the neighbouring Andover deposit itself. So it's looking likely at this stage is that the potential is that Ridgeline is going to be a much higher grade deposit than what we saw in the neighbouring Andover deposit. We've got a cross-section here on the left-hand side which shows some of the mineralised intersections which are represented by those coloured dots, where there's 2 vertical or near vertical zones of mineralisation we've identified to date. On the right-hand side is a photograph there of one of the drill holes that we put into the deposit. When we pulled this drill hole up and we saw there's over 6 metres of massive sulphide mineralisation, which has obviously got nickel sulphides in it because it's a very visual mineral, we decided that we would sample it at quite close quarters. So we did 1/2 metre long samples to try and get an understanding of the variability of the nickel grades in this particular zone of mineralisation. And as you can see, the top couple of samples we went into were around about 2.2% nickel. But immediately after that, we went into this more massive material, and it's running between 3.5% up to nearly 5% nickel. Incredibly high nickel grades, much higher than what we found next door at the Andover deposit. And this augurs really well in the future for this particular deposit, when it gets to the resource stage, to add significant tonnes to the overall project resource base. And once again, let's step back a little bit and let's say where to from here. Okay, so what we've got on this image is the tenement outline. The property boundary is shown there in blue, and in purple we've got the ultramafics. Green we've got the mafic rocks there, and the stars on there are all the prospects that we've identified. So, and also those little yellow worm-like features on there are electromagnetic conductor bodies that our surveying has identified, most of which have yet to be drilled. So as far as the exploration on the project goes, we're looking at first one, Andover deposit, resource completed and announced. We've been drilling on Ridgeline, and we've got some cracking good high-grade nickel there, and we expect to be able to continue that through the resource definition stage. We've also drilled a prospect called Seaview and hit some good nickel there, very shallow in fact, as close as within 10 to 20 metres of surface. And we've got a whole bunch of other prospects there which have yet to be drilled as well. So this is turning out to be something like an overall nickel district where we might at the end have multiple deposits, multiple mines, potentially feeding a centrally located processing facility. And hopefully, and that's what our objective is to find. So where to from here for the project? Well, we're drilling. So what we decided to do, we've got a dual pathway structure going on. One pathway is the drilling. It's the resource, exploration and resource definition drilling. And simultaneously with that, there's another pathway, which is the development pathway. And that's being run with the ambition of being able to complete the first of the development studies, a scoping study, towards the end of this year. And within that scoping study, we've got metallurgy, geotechnical studies, mining and processing studies, and all of the other components that go into that various ranges of development studies. For example, the scoping study, pre-feasibility study, feasibility study, to taking it all the way through to a decision to mine. So by running our resource definition drilling in parallel with our development studies program, we're trying to shrink the timeline it takes to actually bring a mine to fruition. Just a quick snapshot on the de-risking of the project. One of the major potential risks would be, can the material that you're finding and drilling and want to be mining be processed? Well, we've carried out the first stage of the metallurgical test work in the middle of last year, and we're now currently carrying out some follow-up test work as we speak. But that first batch of test work that we did quite clearly showed that just a conventional crush, grind, flotation, filtration process will be able to produce concentrates. Either a bulk concentrate in which all of the nickel, the copper and the cobalt are in together, or alternatively split concentrates, a nickel and cobalt concentrate and a separate copper concentrate. And what we've found is that this ore is amenable to both of those scenarios. So then it comes down to, we run both of those models, those streams, we test them to the nth degree, and then we look back and say which gives us the best results, not only technically, but also financially when it comes to your capital costs or your operating costs or the payability of the products that you're selling. So a couple of the photographs that are on there at the moment show quite clearly that sort of golden hue on the left-hand photograph, which is the copper concentrate being floated, and the more silvery grey one, which is the nickel concentrate being floated. Importantly, when we showed the specifications for these concentrates to potential marketers or purchasers of the product internationally, they looked at the specs and they said, yeah, if you can produce concentrates like this, then we'll be in the market to buy those, which is obviously a very strong tick of approval. And importantly, within these concentrates, there are no deleterious elements. There are no nasty elements in there whatsoever. It's as clean as a whistle, and you couldn't get a better product to be processing and delivering. So if we wanted to be building a mine up in this part of the world, where actually are we? Once again, the blue polygon shows where the project area is. It's located just to the south of the town of Roebourne. To get there, we fly from Perth, 2 hours to the Karratha Airport. We're half an hour's drive along the Northwest Coastal Highway through Roebourne and then through the top part of our tenement. From there, we've got really good roads and track access throughout the tenement area, so we can actually get throughout that area without any trouble whatsoever. It's close enough to Roebourne that we've got mobile phone coverage throughout the property. And within that general district, you've got scheme water, power, gas pipelines, airports, ports and things like that. Because of the very strong industrial development that's happened in the area to the south of us, we've got Rio Tinto's mines and their export ports for the iron ore to the north of us. And we've also got Woodside offshore producing LNG onshore, processing of it as well. So there's a lot of industrial activity happening in the area. And if you wanted to build a mine or have a mining operation developed, you could not get a better location where just about everything you want in terms of infrastructure and services is located within half an hour to an hour's drive of the project location. It's just, you could not get any better. So just getting towards a summary of what we've got here. So we've got Azure, the company, and we've got Andover, the project. really good combination together. We've built a team of people who are experts at finding, developing and mining nickel sulfide mineralisation. And in addition to that, we've also got on board people that can be developing mines and operating mines as well. So we've got that experience in-house. We're doing it in commodities, which are the high value end of the battery metal spectrum. So I know we've talked a lot so far. We've talked about lithium and there's manganese and other products like that. In this space, the high value commodities are your nickel, your copper and your cobalt. And that's what we've got at Andover. What we've done so far is identified 4 targets. We've drilled 4 targets and we've hit nickel in all 4 of those. We've now identified more targets and there's a really good chance of finding more deposits when we drill those as well. So the company is in a very strong position in a time, in quite an unprecedented time, of growing metals prices. And we've seen a lot of talks all through today, which we've talked about the markets for the various commodities and the prices for the various commodities as well. I'm not going to go into that in any great detail. That's all been said before. But the prices are all trending in the right direction. Our project is growing as is being developed. And the company is a very, very good position right at the moment. We are well funded. We've got the right sort of commodities in really hot, high price markets and increasing prices as well. Those resources we've identified are growing. We are continuing to drill and we're continuing to hit more and more nickel mineralisation. So things are looking really promising to develop a substantial nickel mining and processing operation at Andover. And because we've got so much work happening at the moment, there's a continuous news flow happening. And there's a lot more good news to be coming out in the near term and throughout the rest of this year and going on into the future. So things are looking really positive for the company, and I'd encourage you to look more into the Azure story. Thank you very much.